Friends, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Let's talk tonight about the esoteric discipline of the mind. We are calling this Taming the Inner Storm, and we're doing this for a purpose. The reason for that is because the mind is a donkey that we must ride, or it's going to ride us. Everyone knows, that donkeys are very stubborn. That donkeys sometimes can be non-cooperative, and the same thing happens with the mind. We must begin here stating this, because if the mind is not disciplined, any effort that we may want to put forward is wasted. We can embrace any kind of other system, but we will always fall back to this condition. Let's make it very clear. Whoever wants to awaken consciousness, they must begin by disciplining the mind. And we must discipline the mind because the mind is not the being. The mind right now is just another tool that has been hijacked by our desires. It has been hijacked by our insecurities and our fears, etc. And with that hijacking, we also see the compounded problem of multiplicity. Because we have millions of thoughts, countless thoughts, and if you observe closely, you will see that there is no central authority behind that. Many thoughts are just random. Things are just connected one after the other because of little things with which we identify. So we do not possess a single mind. We have, each one of us, many minds, and that must change. Each one of our defects has its own mind. It's using the mind for its own purposes, for its own criteria. And in this modern world that you and I exist today, we have the challenge that technology has amplified that noise. Technology did not create this. It simply has made it more challenging for us to deal with. But there is a solution. And the solution is the science of the inner silence. This is where the acts of self-observation come into play. Because when we observe, let's be more clear, when we empower the consciousness to observe, then the observation happens separate from thought. Because there's a big difference between the thing that observes, which is the consciousness, and the thing that is being observed. It is this thing that we must see eliminated, reduced to a cosmic dust. This is why we are always speaking about the necessity of the death of the ego. Because with the elimination of this source of darkness, the manifestation of the consciousness comes into play. The consciousness is radiant in nature, and the more free consciousness we have, the more illuminated we can become. So, what is the solution for us to discipline this donkey? Well, for starters, we just don't negotiate with it. We must learn to train it. And to train it, by training it, we end up with the benefit of enjoying something that is a silence of the mind, a silence that can open the doors for us to access the emptiness. And for this, willpower is the key. It is willpower what is going to set the revolution into motion. So in the next few minutes, what we're going to do is that we're going to show you self-observation in practice. We want you to become the watcher. What does that mean? We want you to empower the consciousness so that the consciousness itself can see. And as it sees, it will perceive the causes behind the ego, not just the symptoms that the ego is generating. And doing this as well, you will come to see how is it that we are bound today to an inner cycle that seems to be a cycle of futility. For example, we go with inferior thoughts. Those egos consume, generating of those inferior thoughts, they consume of your creative power. And in turn, that energy that they're consuming gets corrupted. Corrupted energy that leads to more inferior thoughts, inferior sentiments. And we are seeking to turn that thing around. Let's bring a discipline of the mind that helps with a manifestation of a superior type of energy, of a good transmuted energy that in turn is going to nourish even better thoughts themselves. Because this is what gives us a good connection with the inner being. This is what leads us to the inner mind, to an awakened mind. So this is what we are going to be doing today. Let me tell you this, if you're still here, if you're still listening to this, stick with us. We're going to show you some of these keys to the inner discipline. And we're going to start by something that is called becoming a sannyasin of thought. This word sannyasin, it comes from the Sanskrit. And a sannyasin, or a sannyasa, is a person who has renounced to all worldly attachments. They have sought to renounce their egoic identity because they are pursuing a spiritual liberation. So if we can translate this, make this easier to understand, rather than saying becoming a sannyasin of thought, we would rather say this is the work so that we can renounce our egoic identity, and in that renunciation, allow the thought to be not that of the ego, but that of the being. In his writings in the book Igneous Rose, Samael says, to be a sannyasin of thought, it is urgent to have acquired absolute chastity, tenacity, serenity, and patience. That's a lot to take right there. And the reason for that is because Igneous Rose is an advanced book. If you're not familiar with it, Igneous Rose is a book that shows the keys to the magic of nature. And because it is an advanced book with advanced topics, those who have been missing the correct cultural foundation for these teachings, they will miss many key elements. They will see a statement like this one, urgent to have acquired chastity, tenacity, serenity, and patience, and people will run a very brief review in their mind, and they will say, serenity and patience, I have to be kind, check, I can do that. Tenacity, yeah, do the work, yeah, I can do that. Absolute chastity, what does that mean? I kind of don't like that, and then they miss it. No. To be a sannyasin, we must be a renunciant. We have to look inwardly and abandon these inferior aspects that we are so in love with. All of these silly personal ambitions and attachments to the ego, etc. This is something that we must break free from. Because a sannyasin is not just abandoning the worldly things around them, but abandoning the tyrannical illusion of the mind itself. I'm not going to get any deeper into this. As a matter of fact, let's take these words of Samael and let's paraphrase them into a language that we can maybe understand better today, some 60 years after he said it the first time. So if we were going with the greatest respect to paraphrase the words of Samael Aun Weor, we would say, his message is, to master your mind in today's world is not easy. It's not a small feat. It demands unshakable discipline over your impulses, the strength to persist through discomfort, and the serenity to sit in silence without needing escape. I think that this may resonate better with you. All of this mental clarity begins where our indulgence ends. So now that we can see this from this perspective, the discipline over your impulses, this is what he means when he says as absolute chastity. And I guess that we can clearly understand this concept of chastity because we are all familiar with that story from the book of Genesis. I mean, that is a foundational concept. We see two characters in this Garden of Eden, and they are known to consume of a fruit from a specific tree. And from that moment forward, everything got sour. Everything got difficult. This is the story of Adam and Eve. But what we will tell you here, as we try to move you from the general public education into something that is a little bit more refined in esoteric knowledge, allow us to tell you that discipline over your impulses in the story of Adam and Eve is intimately associated with the mind and with the sexuality. Because Eve is a symbol of the sexuality, that is what it represents, among other things, and Adam is a symbol of the mind. So when Eve consumes of the forbidden fruit from that tree of the science of good and evil, with Eve being a symbol of sexuality and consuming a forbidden fruit, you can immediately intuit what that means. There is an abuse of the sexual creative power by some humanity very long time ago in a remote past. But because Eve is a symbol of the sexuality, if we integrate that symbol into our form, then notice that when Eve consumes of the forbidden fruit, when it falls victim of its sensations, it hands over the fruit to Adam, Adam being the mind. So, the first shock happens at a sexual level. The creative energy is lost. The sensation overcomes that human being at the time. That sacred water is spilled and the mind follows, creating thus an energetic exchange path. And today, that exchange path either creates no egos that you may not notice that you have created, or strengthens other old egos that you have been carrying from this life and perhaps many lives before. So this discipline over the impulses, this absolute chastity that Samael is speaking of, it is saying you must be watchful enough so that you can safeguard that creative energy so that you can interrupt the cycle of action of the ego. And for us here, this must start with no identification. Don't identify with the things that come to you through the senses, whether the sense of touch, hearing, eyes, sight, which is a sense of sight, smell, or taste. No identification. Deny the fascination. When you do that, you break the habit of falling deeper into a deeper state of an asleep consciousness. This is important. And Samael relates this to the law of three. There's a law of the Holy Triamashikamno, which means the law of the Holy Three. And that law states that the number 3 always creates. Because that is a cosmic law, we can benefit from applying that law. And so, a holy affirmation, a holy negation, results in a holy conciliation. Deny the fascination, no identification, that is the holy negation. The affirmation is the one of the consciousness. And of course, the conciliation is in that connection between the being and the consciousness itself. But he also says tenacity. And tenacity is associated with persisting through discomforts. That means that there is some inconvenience behind doing this. There is some difficulty, and we must expect that. I mean, we have been living for many lives with many bad habits. We cannot expect this to be resolved overnight. This requires effort. And to address that effort, what the esoteric wisdom says is that we are a tower of 2 rooms. One room is the wisdom of the inner worlds, and that belongs to the subconscious that exists physically at the level of the cerebellum. And then the other room is the wisdom that we acquire through the physical plane, and that belongs to what we can refer to as conscious today, that is associated to the brain. In this tower of 2 rooms, we must merge the 2 rooms. We must merge the rooms in this tower. The subconsciousness and the consciousness must unite. And the key to this is the exercise of hindsight. It is the exercise of retrospection. Why is that? Because when you do an exercise of retrospection, the things that you ended up doing unconsciously become conscious. Everybody says, hindsight is 20/20. And that is very wise. Because when you look back, suddenly you realize things that went wrong, that you did wrong, and that you can do better. And this is what hindsight does. This is retrospection, starting at this moment, and from this moment backwards until the instant in time in which we are stopping the exercise. And there are 2 times in the day in which it is very useful to do retrospection. One time is at night, before you go to bed. Revisit the events of the day. Make conscious the many things that happened that you didn't even notice. When you do this, you replace mechanical memories, so many fantasies. You replace that with what is known as the memory of the esoteric work. And the memory of the esoteric work goes to the consciousness, not to the memory banks of the brain. This is why this is so important. Mechanical memories are very fragile. You can change them, you can taint them. We don't need that. We do an exercise of retrospection, and we're seeking to make conscious what was unconscious during the day. So if you do that at night, you take account of what you did during the day. And when you wake up in the morning, when you do retrospection, you bring back the memories of your experience in the astral plane. Because by now, you already know that the dream experience is nothing more than you wandering unconsciously in the astral plane. The dream state is an astral projection. So this is the key to fuse the two towers, and this requires tenacity, because this feels like work, but in reality it is not. I mean, you don't have to do anything. You're resting there comfortably. All you have to do is refocus and go back in your day. And that pays back tremendously. And Samael also uses two other words. He says serenity and patience. We translated that to say, sit in silence with no need to escape. That is serenity and patience. And to this effect, close the door to negative emotions. Be indifferent to praise or blame. Be indifferent to triumph or defeat. This may sound a little harsh, but listen, this does not mean to suppress emotions while you're tweaking inside. I mean, this does not mean refrain and tweak inside. That does not mean close the door to negative emotions. What this means is that we must learn to be capable of perceiving and knowingly denying the inferior reactions, because we comprehend the harm that they are creating to us and the harm that they are creating to others. If anything, you are embracing a principle of kindness and compassion to you and to everyone around you. So learn to be indifferent to praise or defeat. Perceive the praise, perceive the defeat, perceive the blame, perceive the triumph. But you don't have to be reacting to it. You must remain in complete control. Joy, not frenzy of madness. Sadness, but not despair. You see? This does not mean that feeling is forbidden. It is not. It is part of our human experience. But what it means is to learn to experience this life in absolute control. We must learn to feel and enjoy, just as we must also learn to suffer. It is okay to be sad, okay to cry. It is not okay to throw yourself into a pit of despair. It is okay to celebrate, to be joyful, but not to be wrapped in a frenzy of madness where you behave like strange. No. This is what Samael says. When we can do this, when we can discipline our impulses, when we can persist through discomfort, when we can remain there calmly and perceiving, things start happening at the level of the mind. And these are some things that you can expect. Because the mind is going to start giving you a series of images. At first, when you're doing your retrospection, the images are going to be fleeting images. That means they're going to flash for a brief instant and then disappear. But as you persevere in this work, the images are going to start changing. Ultimately, you're going to be perceiving images that come to you from the supra-sensible worlds of creation. I mean, there is a big payback behind this. This is why the motto of every sincere practitioner who is seeking to transform himself is telema. Telema means willpower. So when you persevere, suddenly those images become so vivid that they start evoking feelings. Some feelings may be on the joyful side, and some feelings may be on the harsh, suffering side. But nevertheless, they start producing those feelings. As you continue with the work, some images will start sparking inspiration. Wow. You will perceive an image, and right then and there, you will know the true meaning of that thing without relying on the process of thought. As you continue with the work, you will be able to start creating connections through your consciousness on these images. An exercise of retrospection in the morning because of images that you perceived in your dream state while in your astral travel. And you're able to gather those symbols, and as you're going through the day, see the effect of those symbols in the day. That is a huge deal. And as you continue evolving in this work, suddenly those mental image frames that you are perceiving, they are loaded with light, color, heat, and sound. More so when you are working in many other of these practices and developing the faculties of your magnetic centers, your chakras, particularly the chakra Ajna, the third eye in between your eyebrows, as that one becomes active, light, color, heat, and sound. This is part of what you can expect as a result of this work. So it is important that we persevere. Look at what Samael says, back again in the book Ignis Rose. The practitioner sees any internal image and instantly knows its meaning and the reason for each thing. This is the third scale of knowledge known by the name of intuitive knowledge. Intuition and inspiration, right then and there. Imagination, inspiration, and intuition are the three obligatory paths of initiation. And all this comes as part of this discipline of the mind. So how is it that we tame this storm? How is it that we can bring calmness into this mind? For us to be able to do this work, there are some basics that must be satisfied. Eventually, you will reach a degree of mastery in which you will be able to do this in daily activity. But to do this work of getting the most from the exercise of hindsight, the practice is then for us to fuse these two towers of the conscious and the subconscious by relaxing the mind and the body. This relaxation of the mind and the body, today, people call it mindfulness. We're going to tell you this. Mindfulness is a new way for a practice that is thousands of years old. This practice of mindfulness today, what is truly known as meditation, requires of you to do 4 basic things. The first thing is called asana. That means be comfortable. Assume a comfortable posture. You do not have to sit in a lotus posture if your body does not allow you to do that. If you can do that, lotus posture, fine. If not, sit on a chair. If you cannot sit on a chair for long, lay comfortably on your back. If you're choosing to lay on your back, lay on your back in such a way that your head is pointing north, so that you are aligned with the currents of the earth. That is a wonderful way to do it. Assume a comfortable posture, whatever is the posture of your choice. Just do it, maintaining a degree of awareness. Once you are in that comfortable posture, we must make an effort to keep the mind under control. That is called pratyahara. Pratyahara seeks to make the mind still. This is what we have to do. Once that mind is still and it's not wandering around randomly like crazy, then we can go into a space where we can concentrate. That concentration is a deep reflection about whatever the thing is that you are seeking to concentrate. In Sanskrit, that is called dharana. And once you have a good posture, asana, a calm mind, pratyahara, you're concentrated, dharana, you can then naturally fall into a deep state of meditation that leads to the ecstasy or the samadhi that the great masters speak of. That last samadhi is preceded by dhyana. Dhyana is the deep meditation. These are the 4 things that we must do. So how can you achieve a mind that is not wandering? How is it that you can keep your mind still? Because we tell you this, the mind is going to fight, it's going to rebel, and it's going to fight back. So let's talk for a moment about overcoming the restlessness of the mind. You sit there comfortably, you're breathing, you're trying to calm the mind, and suddenly images start coming up. You feel that you are getting relaxed, that your mind is cooperating, and suddenly, boom, surprise, one image. When an image shows up in the mind, don't fight it. Don't suppress it. Don't justify it. And much less, don't get identified with it, because by now you identify with it, you go with that storyline from that image, and suddenly there's something there that invites another thought, and 30 seconds later, you are 7 layers of thought deep in God knows what. No. Don't identify with it. Examine it serenely so that you know its content. Look at that image. Contemplate that image just like when you are contemplating an image on your TV. Observe the image and make a difference. Differentiate. Is this image something that you have received, or is this an image that you have unconsciously created and projected? This is important. Is this something that the ego just threw out there? Or is this an image from the inner worlds that I have received? Ask yourself this, because every image must have a satisfactory explanation. Look at your day, and when you see these images, find somewhere in your day, where was I thinking that led to that? What was I feeling that led to that? What actions did I take that are manifesting in this way? You must find the correspondence in this plane of physical objectivity. As it is happening inside, it has manifested outside. How do we see that? It is important that we do this. Actually, Samael says, when the student's images cannot be explained through a logical concept, it is a sign that the student mind is perfectly unbalanced. So this is good news, because at first, it's going to be very difficult to explain them logically. But as you start doing retrospection in the morning, as you revisit your astral experience and you bring back those symbols, suddenly you start creating the connections among these images. And that is an indication that your mind is getting more balanced time after time. This is how we do it. Differentiate something that I have received internally, or is this a projection from the ego? For those images that you get from the ego, there are so many, we want you to know that you can synthesize those images, because you will always find the truth in the middle path. For example, the ego projects an image. It is a thought of hatred. It is a perverse memory. Those memories are very intense. They're very violent. So once that image is there, contemplate it and apply the polar opposite. Look at the mental projection. Look at the thing that ego threw at you and find its polar opposite. So if it is an image of hatred, somebody that you despise, you cannot even see them in pictures, then see that in terms of love. If suddenly there is a lustful thought that comes to you, rather than fighting it, suppressing it, find yourself tweaking in the exercise. No, we don't want that. Contemplate the image and apply its polar opposite. That means that body that you're looking at, that mental image that is voluptuous or chiseled or whatever it is that it's doing the thing for you. See the polar opposite when it's old, when it is wrinkled, when those muscles no longer exist. When instead of having that skin elasticity and that glow, what you see is just wrinkles and spots. Actually, take it a step further and visualize that form in the grave, consumed by nature. And you will see that suddenly contemplating at those polarities brings you to a reconciliation, to a holy conciliation right there in the middle. Suddenly you start realizing that all these things pass, that these things are ephemeral, that they are here today and they will be gone tomorrow. Suddenly they don't have that force over you. I mean, if what the mind throws at you is a comparison, you start thinking of someone tall and you see yourself small next to them for whatever reason, apply the polar opposite. See them small. See yourself tall next to them. And as you start doing that, you start noticing that there are some truths that have not been considered. Suddenly you start contemplating abilities, virtues, values, faculties, etc. And then you realize that there's really no difference between you and them, that we are all the same, that we all have the same opportunities. You see, holy affirmation, holy negation, holy conciliation. This is how we must manage these projections of the ego. But I have a treat here for you. For those of you more advanced students, those of you students who are already into the first chamber, into the second chamber studies, I'd like to share with you the second jewel of the Golden Dragon. And I'm offering this because sometimes we need a stronger antidote. Samael shares the second jewel of the Golden Dragon with his second and third chamber students. This happened many years ago. What he says to his students is, we must become more independent of the mind. The mind is certainly a dungeon, a prison where we are all captive. So first, we must consider the mind as something that is not of the being. People, unfortunately, are very identified with the mind. They say, I'm thinking. They feel as if they are the mind, when we know that we are not. And the thing is, the mind makes all creatures miserable. Real wisdom is not in the mind, but beyond the mind. The ignorance of the mind is what leads to so many serious errors. This is exactly why the mind is symbolized with a donkey. Because the donkey is stubborn, because it does not cooperate, because you have to drag it, you have to make it work. But when we dominate the mind, again, something wonderful happens. And we see that because the lives of the masters are lived in symbols, the great master Jesus gives us the best teaching when it comes to dominating the mind. In Palm Sunday, Jesus arrives to the celestial Jerusalem sitting on a donkey. The celebration is such that the Israelites come out of the gates of the city and they pave the way with branches of palm trees. By the way, if you see palm trees on a dream, that means victory, okay? So they pave the pathways with branches of palm trees, a symbol of victory, and we see here the Christ sitting on a donkey, dominating the mind. When we take this as an esoteric teaching, we can see that the great master, Yeshua, a Christified man, a master of perfection, he is also a symbol of our inner being, a symbol of our consciousness. That inner Christ, that solar force that exists within each and every one of us, has the ability to do this so that our consciousness can dominate the mind. And so we can walk into that celestial Jerusalem victoriously. So what does Samael say relevant to the second jewel of the Golden Dragon? He says, if you're experiencing doubt, dissect the doubt. Let's understand that doubt is the canker of the soul. If you experience doubt, dissect it. Don't battle it, don't hide it, don't justify it, don't ignore it. Use it for your benefit. Dissect the doubt with self-criticism. How do we do that? Find out on that doubt what is important about it, what is not important about it. Once you take that first approach, once you make that first cut with self-criticism. We focus on what's important about that doubt. And then we ask, what is real about it? What is unreal? What's fantasy? And suddenly what seemed to be important is not that important, because there are many fallacies there. There are many lies there. And as we reach to what is real and important of our doubt, the doubt itself has clarified for us concepts, and it has given us back more wisdom. As part of this second jewel, if your mind is insistent with useless chatter, when the mind persists on that random noise in your head, the teaching is interrogate the mind. Ask the mind. This does not mean stop your meditation, open your eyes, and open your mouth. This means from the voice that emanates from your heart, ask the mind, what do you want? What do you want? And you will see that there will be a mental representation that will show up in the screen of your mind. The answer will be on the image itself. Talk to the mind. As you perceive that image, what is important? What is not? What is real? What is not real? Talk to the mind. Demonstrate to the mind. Show the mind the uselessness of all those worries, the uselessness of all those preoccupations. Show the mind the reality of the circumstance, and the mind will calm down. But sometimes the mind is a little bit more difficult than all this together, and the mind will continue to insist. And if it does, from that voice in your heart, speak clearly to it. Samael says, talk to the mind as if it were a strange subject. And what do you say? Empower the consciousness to recriminate and admonish the mind. What are you looking for? And wait for an image to emerge. What do you want? Wait for an image to show up. Why would you not allow peace? Wait for an image to show. Because the mind will give you back mental representations. If suddenly you're engaged in an argument on your head, and you're talking and you're listening, you are engaged in some arguments with egos. Allow the mind to show you a mental representation and look for the symbols in those images. Let me share with you some of these mental representations of the mind. It is possible that an image comes to you and you see shoes. You may be wearing them, they may be on a shelf, they may be on the floor. If you see those shoes, white shoes, indicate spiritual balance. But if the shoes are black, that means that you must purify yourself. If the shoes are dirty, it means that you may have not been walking the path of life in the most edifying and dignifying way. And if you see yourself without shoes, that is an indication that you are at the beginning of your spiritual path, which is a good thing, because you're already right there, past the starting line. That is good. If you see a path in these images, a path is always an indication of prosperity or ordeals. For example, if you're walking in a path that is paved, that is comfortable to the feet, that means prosperity. If you're walking on a path that is full of potholes, full of gravel, that hurts your feet when you're walking, that means ordeals. And if you see flowers along the path, flowers are always symbols of virtues. That means that the path is favorable. It is possible that you could see an airplane in these mental images. Airplanes are always a symbol of spiritual progress. I mean, soaring, that's what it means. But if you see that the plane is falling from the sky, that is an assurance that one of your plans is going to fail. And it could fail because of mistakes. It could fail because of the decree of the law is for it to fail, so that you can get some specific lessons from that experience. But keep that in mind. You could also see a dog. You could also see a horse. Horses are symbols of the physical body. If you see a horse that is strong, corpulent, that gives you an indication on the health of your physical body. If you see a horse that is sick, you must be watchful because something may be happening that you haven't noticed yet. If you see a horse that is galloping out of control, that means that you may not be living your life very well. I mean, you want it to be in control. And when it comes to dogs, dogs are always a good symbol of friendship. White dogs, good friends. Black dogs, friends that you must be careful with. If you see a dog that is black and white, well, we all have a little of white and a little of black inside each and every one of us. But a dog can also be a symbol of karma that must be paid. A dog can be a symbol of the state of your philosophical Mercury, the quality of your sexual creative waters. So if you see a dog that is sick, that should give you an indication on what is the quality of your waters. If you see a dog that is playful, in addition to friendship, that indicates that there is much that you can gain from working and transmuting your creative waters. And let me share with you just a few more, because this could go for a long time. If you see rain in those images, rains are considered, for the most part, a symbol of tears, suffering, and sadness, negative emotions. If you happen to see yourself in that mental image, sheltered, contemplating rain that is happening out there, well, that is indicating that you are protected against some sufferings that may be coming around. If you see bread in that image, nourish yourself with wisdom. And if you, dear friend, are practicing alchemy, if you're involved in the practice of the great arcanum, involved in the super dynamics of love, that means that your work is being fruitful. Persevere. Don't stop. If in that image you happen to see candy, sweets, pastries, cakes, be ready to transform, because if you see yourself eating pastries, eating something sweet, that is likely that sufferings and harsh ordeals are coming your way. They may be a symbol of satisfaction, of some celebration, but based on what we have seen, sufferings and ordeals. If in the image you see the police is always a symbol of the archons of karma, the divine law. So if you see them sending you to prison, that means that soon enough you will be paying your karmic debt. And teeth. I like to close with teeth, because at some point everybody has had a dream in which they see all their teeth falling off. Teeth represent riches. They represent good health. They represent importance. But if you are having an image and you're seeing your teeth falling off, that means spiritual tragedy. We have to go back and we must revisit our actions, our thoughts, our sentiments. Make sure that we're living a life that is dignifying and edifying. So, what does Samael say? During the practices of internal meditation, we must be in the most resounding interior rest, because any agitation of the mind, any attitude of impatience is going to disturb the mind and prevent the perception of internal images. So we must not be agitated. There's some key takeaways here. Friends, I want you to know that everything that we do is important. Everything that we do during the day counts. And the way that we live our day will dictate the degree of internal unrest that we are experiencing. If you are having a day that is very conflictive, what you will be experiencing is inner tension and stress, and that is counterproductive to the exercise of meditation. If you're spending your day on your mobile device and you're scanning that Reddit page and you have accumulated thousands of bananas because of how much you have scanned, that is a big deal. Because all of that mental scattering results in inner chaos, in a mind that continues to be easily distracted. So we must make a change, because receiving these images is a grace. Understanding these images is part of the donum Dei, the gift of God. These images are given to us by our being. as part of that laconic action of the being so that the consciousness can perceive and take the necessary action. So to improve the quality of our days, we must give form to a rich internal life. And allow me to close by showing some recommendations on things that you can do to improve your internal state so that you can transition to a resounding internal state of peace and calm that enables you a good, fruitful meditation and perceive these images. Friends, make an effort to cultivate the quality of veneration. Venerate all sacred and divine things. Show the most profound respect for the works of the Creator, for the works of the great masters. Show no preferences to anyone. Be respectful to the rich person, to the poor person, to the president, to the janitor. Show the same degree of kindness. Cultivate your courtesy. Do not judge. Don't spend your time criticizing anyone, criticizing your circumstances, complaining. Cultivate your patience and your foresight. Put an end to the desire of accumulation and greed. Be indifferent to gold, to riches, to brands. Appreciate life for what it is, which is a doctrine of the heart. And please, please, be wise with the use of your words. Calculate the result of your words, because our words have the ability to create. Let's choose words that bring harmony, that heal, that calm others. In the same way, let your mind be simple, humble, full of the deepest respect. Cultivate gratitude. Don't be envious. Be sincere, because in the substance of sincerity, the most beautiful flowers of the Spirit will germinate. Samael tells us, all these qualities will give us a rich interior life. This is how we prepare ourselves internally for the great esoteric disciplines of the mind that blaze among the scorching flames of the universe. Friends, this is what we wanted to share today. We sourced this material from several books and lectures from Samael. If you would like to go in inner depth of study, you're certainly welcome to do so. But this is what we wanted to share with you today. Building an esoteric discipline of the mind so that we can tame that inner storm. Dear friends, thank you so much for joining us this evening. May your beings be happy.